All right, so this is one of the first times I'm live. Let's see what we got here. Generally have no one on here, but I figured I'd just go live. So we had the. I'm super excited about this. I'm gonna be releasing a couple more videos about Next.js 13, and they just had the conference. They just had the Next.js 13 conference, which was super crazy exciting. It was pretty much like Apple. Like it was like an Apple. Um, like an Apple conference, like a launch and announcement of Next.js 13, which was crazy. Now, there's a couple of things I loved and a couple of things that I don't like about it. But I'm definitely going to be adopting Next.js 13. But there is a huge difference between 12 and 13. I think we're really going to have to be super careful. And I think it's going to take, as much as, Vercel and the team wants to make it seem like it's a smooth operation and it's going to be incremental, adoption. I think there's going to be, you definitely don't want to be, I doubt if you have an app, you want to be incrementally changing that app into Next.js 13. I think what you're going to want to do is really use it for new apps and kind of move on. You eventually probably will adopt it overall in like little overhauls you can test. But there's going to be a lot of refactoring. So let's talk a little bit about what Next.js 13 does. So if we go to nextjs.org and you go /13, it's this post right here. And let me just make sure I'm showing everything. Yeah. So now essentially there's this app directory. They've talked about this in an RFC for a really long time, which was like this app directory, which when I saw it, I loved it. But I was like, how the heck do we get into this? Like every time I installed the latest Next.js, I never saw it. So one thing is you actually have to add it manually, something they don't talk about. And it's in beta and it's experimental. So that's another thing that's kind of annoying because you make this announcement, it's like Apple, right? Like Apple announces something, an iPhone 14 or an iPhone whatever. It's available 2 weeks later, the real iPhone. The one thing that's it's kind of like a disappointment is that when I heard that this was going to be announced as Next.js 13, I thought that day or shortly thereof, this was in production. But no, this new, which is kind of like really, I would say it's a really opinionated way of thinking of JS. It's really opinionated and very structured that this is still in beta and it's experimental, and you actually have to manually flag your ability to want to use this directory. And they're asking people to kind of look at it and get started. But I know devs, listen, most devs don't want to be experimenting. We kind of want to know this is stable and we're good to use it. So you gotta sort of be somewhat of a superhero if you're gonna be trying to test out Next.js 13. I think it's cool. I personally really like what it does. I just wish they sort of were confident about its release and kind of had it in it was out of beta. But that's okay. So let's get started talking about a little bit about what it is. So the one biggest thing I would say about Next.js is that the 13, to me, the biggest update is that it's server side first, or it's adopted React server components by default. So now if you use this app directory, all of your components are server components, this is interesting because a lot of people in React haven't even been using server, like just the fact of server components are new inside of React. So now that it's in Next.js, it's like, well, wow, like now it's the actual default. So it's this complete shift. It's just a complete different way of thinking, which is that if you're going to be working in a Next.js app, most of your components are going to be server side. Now, server components, the difference between server and client is that the server, you can fetch the ideas that you want to be data fetching through that component. And client components, you want to be doing things that involve like on-click events, event listeners, more UI interaction. But to me, this is kind of a conundrum because I think this idea of separating server and client has always been a little bit confusing. It always felt like it came from technology that wasn't really web-based, because if you do any web technology, if you come from the WordPress days, from the PHP days, like the web is interactive, and I don't really see, like, we'll have to see how it plays out, but it feels to me you always need to fetch data and you always need interactive UI that oftentimes interacts with data. So I don't know. For whatever reason, they have to keep. I think at some point, probably the right thing is for everything to kind of come together into one component. But for now, we're using React server components. So you got this app directory beta. Every component is a server component, meaning certain things won't ship to the client. So if you console log in any component inside of Next.js that's in the app directory, it won't console log inside of the browser. It'll console log in your terminal. That's one way to know right away. Now, if you want to create it, if you want to make that server component a client component, then what you're going to do is you're going to say use client, and that's what we can sort of get into now. So if you let's look at this now. So if we open this up, right, and we do, let's see here. So let's go ahead, and what we'll do is, let's do this live. We'll do CD development live, and then I'll do npx create next app at latest. All right, so it'll install in the latest. I'll just say Next.js 13. I think I have one already. Okay, I'll do another one. I probably was playing with this Next.js -13. So now it's going to install, Next.js 13. Okay, so now let's CD into that. All right, and let's do npm run dev. Oh, I wasn't even sharing. Let me actually make sure I'm sharing my code. Oh, here we go. All right. Well, I didn't do anything crazy except install, Next.js. So let's go ahead and open this up. Let me move this over a bit. Now, okay, so this is running. So let's go ahead and let's put in our next. Where is Next.js 13? Development live. Why is it not showing here for me? That's interesting. Huh. Oh, let me try open folder from here. It's not showing in my Finder window. It's super strange. Here it is. All right, so there we have it. So now it's loading here, and then we'll do npm run dev. All right. So let me switch over to the browser and let's get this up here. So there we go. So we just have basically Next.js, right? To what you see all the time. Now, when you look at the directory, so let's switch over now to the code. If you look at the directory here, you see here that nothing looks different. You still see the pages directory, which feels kind of strange. You're like, okay, well, you guys are telling us about this app directory, but I just installed Next.js 13. I don't see it. So you have to manually add it, manually create some of the files, and manually flag that you're going to be into this experimental mode. To me, again, super strange, but let's go into it. So we'll say, so basically they say that if this works, pages will still work, but then the app directory will work as well. And you could incrementally move pages into the app directory. So let's go ahead and create a new folder called app. And this folder essentially will replace kind of like what your underscore app.js file was. So we will, for now, what we'll do is we'll delete this. We could just go ahead and delete the app, delete the pages, or you can just add in, some sort of dash and put those, like, rename them. But I went ahead and deleted it, right? So now if we go ahead and create a new file, the default page inside of the app, the default was index prior. Now it's page.js. Page.js is the default index page for anything, right? So if we go to the browser, let's go here, and we got the app directory, and these are called pages, not pages, page.js. That is the default file, like the index or the default, HTML file for any folder. If it's in the root, it's going to be the home page. Okay. So now we'll save that. Well, we didn't put anything there. So let's just put a basic old export function, right? So whoops, what happened here? Opened accidentally. So let's put this Okay, so now it says we found a change in next config. Oh, sorry, I gotta switch back. So now we're back here in the page, right? So I just put a basic, let me see if I can actually add the window of the browser to here. So this way we can at least have some idea of what we're seeing. Let's say, where is it? Safari right here. All right, so just in case, let's move this around here. Let's make it small. Let's put it up here just so things don't get lost. Oh, it's upside down. Wonderful. Let me delete that now. Forget it. All right, let's go back. Let's not waste any time. So we just put a basic, page right in here. So now let's click save. It says there's a restart. So let's close this out. Let's run this again. And see what I mean? There was already some errors. They claimed this was supposed to be, oh, let's see what the errors say here. Okay. So now, so here's what they're telling us. So now, right, if you don't know what's going on, they're saying, hey, the app directory is experimental. Please add experimental app directory true to your next config. So you can't even start using this unless you flag this right here in the next.js, in the next config file. So now we'll save that, and we'll do npm run dev again. Now they're telling us, your page.js did not have a root element. They already created a layout element. So here's the other thing about the app directory. It needs a page.js file and it needs a layout. The layout is basically the shared, a root layout that goes across all pages, which is awesome. I love that because I used to make it manually. And then if you want to create other layouts, what's cool is you can make this root layout and then you could actually have a layout that's used in other routes. So this is cool. So they've already this is one cool thing. Like they actually just went in and created it. And this is mandatory. So these are required. You need to have this layout. And what's required out of the layout is it to be called root layout and it to have this HTML and body tag. It doesn't need the head tag, but it needs that. So that's important to know. Now that resembles basically so if we refresh here, let's go to the browser. Here we have it, right? So you see now, this is actually pulling our page. It's actually pulling this page and it's being held this as a layout. And how you'll know that that is in the layout, because if I switch, if you look at the browser and I add like an X, to the beginning and end, if you check here, if you look at the code here, I've added X before and after children. And if you look at that, you can see that it's added. And now that's shared, that's in the layout. So if you make another page, what's cool is if I go ahead and make another page, right, so you can see that X. Now let me actually save this page. Let's save it as an about page. So let's go ahead and make another about. You can label this about.js, or we can name it, we could just give it a folder called about, and then we can give it another index page called page.js. And then what I'll do is change it to about. And then we'll call this about just so we can see the difference. We'll go back to the regular page and call it home. So you can see the difference. All right, so now if we go back to the browser, you can see here it did home, and let's go to about. Let's just make sure it didn't break here. Great. So now you see here two different pages, but you see the X's, meaning they're shared layouts, without me having to have done anything different inside of the page, because it's all in the layout. That's what's super cool, because that was something we were sort of manually grappling with prior to NextJS 13. So this I love, and I hate that this is labeled experimental, because it scares the hell out of me, because developers don't want to be experimenting. We kind of need, we work at job, we want to make sure what we're doing works. So, but if this is eventually to become stable, as long as there's nothing crazy that's going to change, I am going to adopt this for new apps, because I love this app directory. Now, the other thing is, realize that everything being created here is a server component. Even if you create further components inside this app directory, this is a React server component. And how we can tell is, if you go to page and we do a console log, okay, so what I'll do here is, let me show you. Let me go to the browser and let me inspect console. Let's open up the console. All right, now let's flip back over to code and let's go to console log on the home page here. Hello. All right, so we just went ahead and saved that. Now let me refresh. This should have, let me refresh the browser. This should have showed. Surprising why it's not showing here. But if we go to the browser and we go back, oh, let's go home. Here we are. So if you go to home page, now check this out. We refresh. You don't see this console log anywhere. Let's actually close this and let's refresh. No console log. Nothing came to the browser. But if we go back to the code, this hello has been executing in the terminal. That's how you know it's a server component. So now the issue with server components is that you cannot use any use hooks, use state, use effects, and all those kind of things. You can't use those. So those are, remember, the client will be more for UI. Server components are when you want to fetch components. But Next.js recommends that you just leave things server components by default, because they've already done that by default, but you kind of just let it happen until you want to make it a client component. Which, you know, I feel like this is going to be a little bit confusing for people because we're so used to React being so front-end client, and now you're saying use server components, and now make everything by default server. I almost feel like it should have been the opposite, but let's go with this. Let's see where, you know, how, you know, deep down the rabbit hole React takes us. So now things are server components. The other cool thing is, so let's talk about fetching data, right? So now that we know that everything is pretty much a server component, let's talk about how do we fetch data then? So let's go to the browser again. Let's go to the Next.js app. I'm going to scroll down. Now, what's cool is, again, you can make a blog folder. If I made it, you can make a layout.js file inside of any directory, and that'll become its index page. And then you could also, page will become its index page, but if you create a layout file, it'll become its layout and it'll be shared on all pages inside that folder. That's pretty amazing. So let's jump into data fetching, because this is what is kind of crazy, is that now they pretty much killed getServerSideProps, which kind of blows my mind, because that's kind of like getServerSideProps was like synonymous to Next.js. We're like, getServerSideProps, Next.js. Now they're using the fetch as the be all and end all of the way to fetch data, which will replace getServerSideProps, getStaticProps, getStaticPaths. It'll all become one. And how you do that is with this simple one function, the use, I don't know if it's a hook from React. Now, this is what's tricky, and I think it's confused a lot of people. This is not use state, use effect, it has nothing to do with use hooks. But they said in the conference, see this as being await. It's synonymous to async, await, that this function in React, we're awaiting the data to come, right? Which is new to React. That's what makes it a server component. And the async function goes outside of the export component, outside of the component itself, and then gets plugged in, and then you can use it. Now, if this was a client component, you can't just use that function in that data. You wouldn't know that it arrived unless you did a use effect and all this other stuff, which I kind of didn't mind, but I guess the whole world hated use effect, data fetching and use effect. I don't know why, but now you don't need use effect. And if it's a server component, you can't use effect anyway. So we're going to basically take this. We're gonna let's do this now in the code. So let's say this is now our home page, and technically we can do this in any component. So if we made a components folder here and we added components, those will be server components, and you can do this with until you specify it as use client. Oh, by the way, let me actually show you how you'd make it a client before we jump into that. A client component. So let's say this is any component. We want to say, hey, just make this use a client. You just say, and I love this, you just say, make this use client. Now you could import use state, import use effect, do whatever you need to do with state and that kind of stuff. Because now if we go to the console log, now let's look what happens if I go to console.log and we say hello, and we go back to the browser. Let's go back home and let's hit a refresh. You can see now that shipped to the browser, that console logged in the browser, right? Before it didn't. So now let's go back. Let's get rid of this. Let's make it a server component again. Look at the browser, refresh. Oh, let's actually clean this up. Hello world stopped shipping to the console, and it's only in the terminal. So now let's say, let's do this. So it's basically import use from React. Great. And now what they're saying here is they want us to create this function. This is just a simple async function. So we'll copy that over, plug it outside of the component. And what we'll do here is let's go ahead and get the, let's get rid of this right here. And then let's get some fake JSON data, fake JSON API. I believe it is this guy. And then let's put right here. So let's just grab these to-dos, plug it in here, await this, let's call it posts. And now let's go back here. There's one more missing item, and it is this. So now when we go back inside the code, we're going to, in the component, we're going to go ahead, get it to say name. And what we'll do here is I'll console log, well, posts. It should be posts. So boom, 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 and we'll do posts. Now we're console logging posts, and you see here, there it is. It pulled all of this data that is, you know, basically the same data that you'll find here, the same data, right? So that worked. So now let's go back to the browser. Let's go to our here, and you know, it's all behind the scenes, right? Nothing, everything is fine. You don't know what's happening. It's pulled data. What's cool is that this is a page component, but technically if this was any old component, like a nav, a footer component, you'd be fine. You'd be able to do this because it would already be server. It would already be a server component. So that's cool. So let's just take this and let's actually literally just take posts, and let's just take the first array, and let's just say dot, I think it was title, I think it was. And let's show you. There it is. The data is just there. We have no problem. We can do whatever we want with the data. And if this is, you know, server components, we're good. We're not going to see, you know, Next.js will handle and React is going to kind of render the page with the data in place. Okay. And that's great. That's one. I love this. I kind of love this. I'm a little scared that getServerSideProps is gone. I'm a little scared that getStaticProps is gone. It's a little weird. But I kind of like that we're just sticking with JavaScript's old fetch. You know, it's just, it kind of feels more simple. Now, how does this become getServerProps or getStaticProps? If we recall, right, like getStaticProps was like static generation, and like getServerSideProps was like making sure you always had the latest data, right? So essentially what they're saying here down here is like, basically we're replacing getStaticProps by saying, hey, never cache this, force a cache, right? So like this will be cached. It'll never, the cache will not bust until either it's redeployed or you manually kind of like invalidate that cache. And then there was an API that allows you to do that, to bust it, blah, blah. I don't fully know if that carried over to Next 13, but we'll find out. But if you literally just add this, then it'll cache. If you say cache no store, that'll become getServerProps. It basically will not cache. And then if you want, you know, we were kind of equating this to getStaticProps to revalidate, which was like, it was static generation, but then it was like, hey, let's revalidate it. Now, I guess these are just the three options. So basically you have cache it completely, don't cache at all, or kind of cache it for X amount of time and revalidate based on X amount of time. Kind of seems like all you need. You know, I assume you can probably, you know, I think probably the best mix is revalidate for some longer period of time, like a 24-hour period, and maybe allow invalidation of the cache so that, you know, you want to be. So it all depends on how you want to do it. If it's like a blog that doesn't really get, you know, updated often, you should probably just cache it or revalidate it every, I don't know, 7 whatever, like days or something, or never. Maybe just cache it, because every time you deploy a new thing, you could probably just deploy, or from your CMS deploy something, and then it'll bust the cache anyway. So the fastest is just to keep it cached, because then the page will like be blazingly fast. So essentially you're just taking, let's just take like no cache, no cache. We go to the code, we're just literally adding it here. And now that's your getServerSideProps kind of, you know, which is pretty sick, you know, pretty amazing. That's it. The other cool thing I like about Next, let's go to the one other thing, is their next image component and the next browser the next link component. So if we go up here to, now they claim they have this Turbopack thing, which is like super duper fast. I can't see any difference while I'm working with Next locally. I don't know what makes it fast. To me, it feels the same. I've actually seen more disruptions in my terminal with the latest version of Next. So I can't speak to that. I'll leave that alone and hopefully that'll get improved. But next link, let's go to next link. That is what's pretty cool. So what I love about next link is let's create a nav component now I'm just going to keep this simple. I'll just do it right here in nav.js. And let's say export default function nav. Let's say return UL. Oh, no, don't want that. Let's say return UL li home about. Okay, so let's say we have a nav component here, and then let's import this nav component in the layout because I want this to go across every page, right? So let's say up here, let's say import nav from nav. Okay, and then let's place it here. Let's say nav. Oops. Nav children. Cool. Now if we go to the browser, you can see here this guy is here, and now if we go to the about page, you'll actually see that guy is there as well, right? So boom, there's a shared layout as we mentioned. Now let's go back to the nav component and let's import the link, right? So we'll say import link from next link. Looks like I deleted something here. I deleted the E instead of export. E. All right, so let's go here and then let's say link home and then href. All right, let me just copy and paste this for now and then change this to about and then change this to about. Now, what's cool about this is you used to have to add this empty A tag, which was ridiculous. Like, why would you add an A tag? Because the link is supposed to be doing it. It was actually more confusing because people are like, oh, it's not working. I need to add an A tag. And then they're like, oh, I have to add this A tag. And all of a sudden, link thing worked. Now, in Next13, you can't add A tag. So they kind of made it easy. So people are going backwards. Like, okay, well, damn, well, let's not add the A tag anymore. So that's pretty cool. So if we go back up here to the browser, home, about, oh, I probably have to refresh. See what I mean? Like it didn't revalidate it. Hold on. What's wrong with this? Let's double check this. Hold on. Let me go back to the code. Close this out. Nav is here. Let's close the browser and start it up again. See, this is what I mean. Like that should have just auto transpiled. But unless there's something wrong with my code, which I don't think there is. So let's go back to the browser, refresh, and there. See, it works. You see that? Like that's what I mean. Like that right there. They said Turbopack is 700 times more fast. And I broke, it stopped transpiling over a simple old component. Right? So there we go. So, right? The link is working and you see that things aren't auto, the rendering, it's just blazingly fast. And the link component is working wonderfully. So that's that. Let's go back to the code. But there's proof of what I meant. Those are the weird quirks I keep seeing that as I'm coding and saving, it's the terminal, the transpiling is breaking, which I don't understand why, because there's said that one of the whole points of the Next13 was that this Turbopack was supposed to make things super fast. I don't know. Do I have to flag it somewhere? I have no idea. So anyway, let's do one other thing, which is the image component. The one thing I love about the image component with Next13 is you no longer need to do width and height. That might have been in the previous version. I don't recall. But now you do not need to use width and height. And let's do here, let's go to the page.js and let's say import image from next image. It's actually, I feel like let's just get rid of, whatever, let's leave it. And then let's go, let me make a parent component here so we could do more work here. And now let's add an image tag here. So image. And then let's say, do I have an image somewhere here laying around? Public. Let me look for, I'm just looking for an image somewhere. All right, cool. So we have something here. All right, so let me just put this image into, so I'm making an images folder and I'm placing an image here. Okay, so you can see here. So what's cool is you could actually put the image folder in app, or you could do it in the public folder. Well, this seems to work. So now, actually, before I show the image component, let's actually create this photo, cons photo. Hold on here. What is it? Let me just check something, guys. Give me a second. Be right back. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much insane, this whole thing, but I will be right back with you. Just checking some of my code bases here. So what you want to do is just, sorry, I had this wrong. That's all. I just wanted to make sure that, so basically you're going to be importing. I don't do this often, so you're going to be importing the photo as a photo. I usually actually use it remotely, and I think that's the idea, is that you have to do it this way if you want to use Next.js's like image component, not having to use the width and height. So in this case, it will import the photo and it'll actually, you know, work with it. You know, it'll actually get the width and height. It'll pre-render that. It'll know what it is. So let's go back to the home. Let's actually put this image now, image source, and we'll say photo, call that whatever you want, but I called it photo. And then we'll have to add the alt tag. Okay, now let's switch back over to the browser, and you can see here the full image. All right. So now let's actually create a class out of this. So let's go code, and let's just say, you know, I wonder if I could just style it here. Nah, I won't do it. It's too much. Let's go into the, we actually didn't add a global. So let's actually add a global. Actually didn't, here, let me add npm I sass, so you can do that. So now let me actually open this up again, npm run dev, and let's delete this. And let's delete what they had here. And let's create a new file called globals.scss. Now, obviously, you can use modules, but just for quick demo purposes, let's create, you know, an image called width 100%, height 100%, object fit cover, object position center. So now we will import that in the layout. So we'll say, let's put it all the way to the top. Import styles globals.scss. So now that should work. So, oh, sorry, no, that should be, yeah. That should work. That should work. Let's see what happens. So if we have an image, again, I'm not using CSS modules here just for the demo purposes, but let's say now if we say class name, and we should say image. So there we have it. So if we go to the browser, look at that, and close the console, you could see it's not overflowing. It actually got the width. She's actually cropped off in the actual photo. You can see the original photo, you know, right here. She's cropped off. So it's going width 100%, but doing object fit cover, but I don't need to add the width and height. Now, if I were to just link this photo directly from, say, Unsplash, or from some place remotely, or from some CMS, in that case, we would have to specify width and height, or use the layout fill property or attribute inside of the image component and then use object fit, it'll work. So, but this is cool. So if you actually import the photo like this, you're getting the photo and you don't need width and height. I love that. It's just cool. Now we have global, so we could play with this. You could do whatever you want with this, but it's importing everything here. So you can see here we just have a globals.ses file. We got it inside the layout. Now it's being used across. Again, you're thinking of your layout sort of like, I would say this app directory with layout and the page is synonymous, or the layout is kind of synonymous to the underscore app.js file. This is a new way of thinking about Next.js. I mean, I really think it is. I mean, I do wish they got a little more, like, they announced this when there was a little more stability and a little more clear direction that, hey, this is the new way we're doing things and this is stable and this is out now. You don't need to flag nothing. It feels a little nerve-wracking that we have to flag this. It feels a little scary that we have to kind of say, let's go to this experimental mode, next config, and let's kind of say, the word experimental seems really strange. And the fact that you are experimenting and then making this app directory, but at the same time, the existence of the app directory is pretty much what signifies Next.js 13, right? This new structure, layouts. So it almost feels like Next.js 13 is just experimental. So this is something that they're going to have to think about. I'm still with them. I'm going to adopt this. I just want to hear some more announcement that, like, on the docs, that this is kind of like where they're heading and this will eventually become stable and out of beta. The other thing that I want to note is that the docs have become a little confusing now. And it's the same thing that happened with React. I know Dan Abramov is like re-hauling the docs from beta.react.js. Next.js is kind of doing the same thing. I think you can find more information in what they have called, what is it called? Beta.nextjs. This documentation is cool because it's a little more current and they're working on it, and some things are grayed out that aren't ready yet. And I'm waiting to know about the API routes because I haven't seen any full complete picture on where does the API, I mean, I could just test this pretty easily, but where does the API folder go now? I imagine it's just going to go into the app directory. There won't be any issues with that, but just in case, I am definitely a little curious about that. And that's something maybe we should just quickly do a test. Let's actually just see. Let's see, since we're here, let's see if we can break this. Let's go to the app. Let's create a new folder called API. Let's just see what happens. I wonder if it's just gonna break. Because I have no idea. Guys, you didn't speak about where this is supposed to go. So let's open up a new thing here. Let's just get the basic hello example they have. So we'll do new file hello.js. Paste it here, saving. Oh boy. I don't have any errors. But you know what? This terminal has been, I'm telling you, like, it's been wacky, this transpiling. Let me actually kind of run it. Let me click save again. Let me go to the console. Let's just see. So if we just go here, we go to API, right? So we got, oh, no, that's wrong. API. And now if we go to hello. No. So it isn't like that. So then what are we doing here? This is what I don't, why isn't this discussed? Like, these are things like I don't get how they could leave that out. API routes, I don't know how they can leave stuff like this out. Are we still using the pages directory? Let me see what happens if I imagine it'll work because we already know pages directory still works, but I don't want to have to do that. Like, why are you making me still stuck in this old thing? You're saying move to the new thing. But let's go ahead and add this again. Let's see if we just literally move this API back into this pages directory and see what happens. Let's actually close and rerun. And let's see if we refresh. All right, so we know that works, right? But then that's always worked. But I thought the idea was that we're moving away from pages. So I don't know what's going to happen with API. Is maybe it goes into, I wonder if it goes into, let's try it in the root too, but let's just make sure nothing else broke. So our app, yeah, so this page, everything's still working here, so we left it there. Let's see what happens if we move the API into, keep it next to the hierarchy, like in the root. Can we, crap, how do we do that? Here, let's just do save as. Files, save as. Let's see if this works. Doubt it, but worth a try. Save. Bop, bop, bop. There's no way this could work because there's no. Is there? Can it? Because there's no routing. Let's just delete the one that's in the pages. Let's close this out. Reopen. Oh, sorry. I didn't show you guys, but what I literally did was I moved hello.js, the API, into the same root to see if that. So inside the app directory didn't work. In the pages directory it worked, but now it moved into its own. Let's just see if it works. We go here. So my pages are still working. Nothing broke. But now let's go to API/hello. All right, so that didn't work, which makes sense. I don't know. I'm not sure what they want. I assume, I don't see it in the docs. I mean, I haven't gone crazy looking through the docs, but we know that we could always just keep it back in good old pages. I just figured we're doing away with that, right? So I don't know where it would go when it comes to this app folder. So again, now here it is. It works again. I just refreshed back into, it's all working. So there we have it, everyone. That is the good old NextJS 13. What do you guys think? You know, I'm pretty excited. I'm semi-annoyed and semi-excited. Like, I was just so excited that honestly, they did so, the announcement, the conference was just so amazing. Really was amazing. So to see it look so good, but then just to like load NextJS to be like, what is this? Your docs aren't ready. The whole premise of the conference is in beta. I have to flag experimental, and I don't know where the API folder goes. I completely have to do it, get server-side-props. But at the same time, you're telling me that like I don't know. That's just one thing. It drives me crazy. Guys, get it together. Anyway, I love NextJS though, so I'm excited for this to go in the right direction again to production. I'm gonna sign off now. If you wanna, know when I go live, follow me on Twitter or wherever you see me. Peace, guys.